talking to Professor Vicki Williams. The topic is the program of social work at Tennessee State University, and she's given us some information relative to some of the progress that this program has made, in addition to some of the information in reference to the current health bill that we will talk about later. Why don't you give us some additional information in reference to what the program itself?
Yeah, first I want to say, before I talk about the health bill, is that we are very fortunate to teach a class. I teach a class on social welfare policy, and in that class, students are engaged in projects. They have to choose a legislation to review and to present in class.
Okay.
And one of my groups last fall chose the healthcare reform bill that was introduced in Congress last fall. And they did an excellent job in discussing the bill and what the intentions and the goals of the bill were. And what was stressed in their presentation is that what we'd like to see occur as a result of this bill is that more individuals can be covered, especially individuals who middle class and working class poor, can be covered with this legislation, in that it would provide a safety net, or at least they will be able to be more involved in preventative services. The issue with the healthcare bill is that we're trying to make sure that if 90% of the people have health insurance, then they're able to have health care on an ongoing basis. They do not have to wait until something critical catastrophe occurs, a catastrophic illness, before they're receiving help, because that's where the cost comes in. These are the individuals that go to the emergency room, and we still in turn have to pay for that. I think that's what people don't understand. You pay one way or the other.
Very good.
And so it seems reasonable that you'd want to pay less if in fact people could receive ongoing preventative care, or even engage in some wellness kinds of activities that could be paid for by the insurance. And then in turn, that lowers the cost of health care.
For everybody.
For everybody. So it's the kind of system where everyone has to be a part of it in order for it to work. If some people are left out, then they end up in the emergency room very sick, and then we end up paying more for that. There are other ways to lower the cost of health care, and I think Obama spoke of one way, which was to make sure that everything is done electronically on the computer, and that would reduce the cost, the paperwork, and so on involved. And so there are other ways to reduce the cost of health care, but the less people that that need critical care, the less people that have to receive critical care, the better. The more that everyone can have access to a primary physician, for example. Of course, we need more of those. I mean, it's ironic that with our healthcare system here, the physicians that have been probably doing better or are able to receive the most in terms of their income and so on, the specialist, because people end up, they're seeing more people because of the fact that people come to see them after they reached a critical point in their health situation. So we need more primary physicians in order for this legislation to be successful, because these individuals need to have someone that they can go to on a regular basis and have checkups on a regular basis, and can be treated, or at least be in a position where they can receive if it's medication or they need to change their lifestyle, that they have that kind of services provided to them, and that's what being insured could provide to them. I mean, the other big controversy was this whole idea about government health care versus the private insurance
Very good.
companies.
Okay.
And, you know, like in Canada, for example, they have that single payer program where the concern was with that kind, with government health care, that there would be accessibility would be a problem. People would have to wait a long time before they could see a physician, and so on and so on. That was the concern, and that you would not receive the kind of quality care that you're receiving right now.
No, well, that's a question.
And that's not necessarily true.
Well, that's,
you know, it depends on what kind of level of care are you talking about. If people are going in to have their blood pressure checked and other kinds of care that where they're being maintained, so to speak, a maintenance process, then that's less expensive, and maybe you wouldn't have to wait that long. But if you're seeing a specialist and they have to decide whether you have to have major surgery or open heart surgery and all that kind of thing, then maybe there would be a longer waiting list, because that entails more physicians, that entails hospitals being more prepared for those kinds of surgeries and so on. So it's a complicated issue. Believe me, it's a very complicated situation, and you really have to sit down and study the bill very carefully. I think presently it's been helpful to families who can now carry their children up to the age of 26. They can keep them on their insurance, and that's a time period when they're in college, or they're in a, you know, even after they get out of college. Young people are having trouble now finding employment, and so the parents can still carry them on at least they're protected with health care up until 26. And another good piece of the legislation is that you now can move from one job to the other. If you have some illness, you can, you know, still continue to keep your insurance, and so that's another good aspect of the bill, that they can't drop you from your insurance because of some catastrophic illness that you have.
Well, let me raise this final question here, and I think in a couple of minutes here. What about the disabled individuals?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. You know, it's very difficult to get disability paid to you these days. But I have to say that persons who are disabled tend to be very involved in their own advocacy, you know, that they've been able to advocate very much for what they needed. But I'm glad you brought that up, because I think there's been some shortage, reduction in funding for the disabled.
That was one of the reasons.
And that has not been a good situation. Again, you know, I think in the United States we need to realize that the money, the way money is distributed in this country, we will continue to hear that maybe 5 to 10% of the population own 90% of the wealth. And it's unfortunate that persons who live a middle class lifestyle, which is very hard to maintain these days, they're becoming more and more what we call the working class poor, are in many ways not able to access the kinds of services they need. And therefore the government has been put in a position where the government now has to provide more services to assist those individuals and to protect those individuals. But these are the people who kind of are in the middle, which are the hard and the most difficult situation, because they don't quite meet the eligibility requirements. At the same time, they don't receive, the wages have not kept up with the cost of living today, and as a result, they're sort of not eligible to receive certain services from the government, or public assistance as we call it, and at the same time, they're not making enough money to maintain a home and to do all the things that we attribute to the middle class.
Finally, do you think that Tennessee State University is making some movement in the program of social work in terms of trying to help the overwhelming majority of the people in Tennessee that we have responsibility for? Well,
first I want to say that my program was the first accredited public social work program in the state of Tennessee, way back in 1974. And the program has been around since that time, and we have contributed a great deal to Tennessee in terms of providing them with graduates, very capable graduates, even here just in Nashville. And many of them come from underrepresented groups such as African Americans and so on, and we need more minority social workers.
And of course, let me thank you, and I'm sorry that we have to interrupt you, Professor Williams, but let me thank you for that excellent information, and let me encourage our audience. Tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you, and